Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from Sort of Interesting, and today for the first time ever you're joining me in a car. Not just any car, my car. Basically, for anyone who's unfamiliar with me and my channel and my life in general, basically up until a few weeks ago at age 32 I could not legally drive and had never had a car. So obviously, after 3 decades of not driving, suddenly I'm finding myself in an extraordinary different situation. For other people who may have found this video via looking up new driving and car videos like that, then a bit of background to my life. Over the last 7 years, I've spent 5 of those years living on boats, little canal boats in the UK, tootling around in the rural Shropshire and Wales. So obviously, without being able to drive, there's been a huge amount of cycling, of buses, of getting lifts to the boat with bags of coal with me granddad and stuff like that. So suddenly having the freedom to be able to drive to and from work, to and from my friends and family, and getting supplies and stuff, while my boat is out in the absolute middle of nowhere, in the back end of nowhere in Shropshire. Obviously, these are suddenly hugely different times that I'm living in. So yeah, I suppose, without further ado, let's talk about getting a car for the first time and my first experiences and thoughts of, well, driving on my own without an instructor sat next to me telling me and keeping an eye on the situation and dual controls and all the rest of it. So to start at the absolute beginning, obviously I passed my test a couple of weeks ago, had a look at cars, and the car buying process can be extremely stressful, I'll say that much. And the first place that I went and did some test drives, unbelievably, there was a car that I quite liked with a £9,000 asking price or thereabout. And I thought, well, that's more than I want to pay for my first car ever. But I thought, well, I really like the car and I'll see if I can come up with some sort of haggling and deal. So anyway, long story short, as many people out there know, they like to try and pile on the warranties and all these different services and stuff like that. And unbelievably, their opening offer to me, after they'd added all these extra things on, for a £9,000 car was £12,500. Yes, they had literally added £3,500 to the asking price. And it was at that moment where I was viewing the £9,000 asking as the absolute maximum that I would be paying. They were viewing it as the absolute minimum. Needless to say, I didn't buy the car. When I bought this car, a Skoda Fabia 2015, about 27,500 miles on the clock, it was almost the exact opposite experience. I think that the chap pretty much knew, right, he's paying up front, he's paying cash, he's not going to be interested in these warranties and that. And so he had a token gesture of sort of pushing for him, but was more than gracious and more than obliging enough to just get the car sorted and get it bought. So I literally paid the deposit there, ran up to the bank, transferred the rest of the money, and then just had to wait a couple of days, well, obviously, to make sure the payment cleared on their side. But they said they'd service it and give it a clean up and stuff. And amazingly, the MOT was only last month, and the only advisories on it were tyres are slightly worn, just monitor and keep an eye on them. And despite the fact that this garage had got all of my money up front, they still actually went as far as to put brand new tyres on it. They got a phone call saying, oh, you can pick the car up a day early if you want. Been cleaned, it's had a service. They weren't happy, said the tyres were a bit worn, so we've put new tyres on it for you. And true enough, when I arrived, there it is. All the tyres got the little coloured lines around them so that you can see that they haven't been used. And well, again, can't say fairer than that, because like I say, they'd already got the money off me. And you think, in 6 months' time, if I came to replace those tyres myself, how much that could potentially have cost me, a good few hundred there. So again, couldn't fault that experience. Absolutely fantastic, and totally opposite to my previous experience with trying to pile all this stuff on and essentially driving me away ultimately. Not in a literal sense. So on to the actual initial experience of driving a car. So you can imagine driving out of that garage for the first time ever, controlling a vehicle on my own, especially a vehicle that I now own as well. There was a certain bit of pressure on me, I'll say that much. A weird little coincidence that I'll just mention here no word of a lie, the chap had, before I drove off, like just showing me how like the electronics and looked at the radio and the phone settings and all that sort of stuff on the dashboard, and he just put Absolute Rock, the radio station, on, and absolutely, hand on my heart, this is the truth, that as I was pulling out of that garage for the first time ever in a vehicle on my own, I can't think of the name of the song, but that song with the main line, which I am not going to burst into song and sing, but Here I Go Again on My Own. It was, well, again, just perfectly timed, and it was like, my goodness me, this is happening. And honestly, I was a nervous wreck. I cannot explain to you. And I think even over the last couple of days that I've had this car, I'm that sort of rigidly holding on, and my legs, oh, well, let's carry on talking and then we'll get to all that. So, as I say, basically, that first sort of, I don't know, mile and a half, I just drove random roads round to go to take the car to my mum's house to show everybody and all the rest of it. And those first moments of just driving around the roads of town on my own, it was nerve-wracking, it was terrifying. I had that pit of my stomach sort of feeling of like, oh, what's happening? I was checking my mirrors, and again, I must have looked like I was having some sort of turn in here. I was that sort of nervous and twitchy. But my goodness me, it's amazing how, even though I certainly wouldn't say well, at this particular point, let's get on to the main driving talk. So, yesterday I drove about, I don't know, almost 80 miles, 70 something miles, I'd say. And I just wanted to go out and just drive. Nowhere in particular in mind. I just had, like, basically, I've just went to a lot of places where the boat is likely to be, so that I could obviously gauge what it's like to travel to these places, and what's really convenient to be able to park the car here, and how far would the boat be away from the car in reality, rather than how I imagined it before I obviously had a car and would be biking to and from the boat all the time. So I just, like I say, managed to rack up 70 odd miles, and honestly, when I had sort of sat down for an hour or so in the evening, after obviously getting out of a proper first full day's driving, I'm not joking, my legs, my feet, my sort of ankles, the top sides of my feet, so tense and so just achy, almost like I had a dead leg sort of thing. Not in a dead leg, it wasn't like that sort of drama, but it was that feeling that it's like, oh, they're painful to the touch, as if everything's a little bit bruised. And again, that's obviously coming from never having used my feet and my muscles like that for such a prolonged period of a good couple of hours. And also, obviously, the intense nervous tension that I had too. Obviously, again, being my first driving experience and going down roads that I hadn't driven down or cycled down before. Well, every road I went on pretty much I'd never driven down before. So obviously there's a lot of like sort of ooh, and again, just getting used to just relaxing into the car and thinking, right, you're in control, until ultimately you start to believe it. And again, I suppose I'll steadily go from driving practically like this, practically with my nose touching the windscreen, to hopefully driving a little bit more laid back. But yeah, I've got to say, it's getting over those initial nerves, and obviously it's just a matter of spending time behind the wheel driving to build up that confidence and that actual fundamental ability. I mean, something like I've tried parking in a few different car parks when it's quiet and that as well. And again, just like when I was taking driving lessons, I had to change to a different instructor at the last minute because the first instructor was sadly taken ill. Obviously, I had to then relearn the sort of cues of, well, if I'm going to pull into that parking bay over there, I need to really wait until the leading line is level with, say, the door handle, and then put the lock on and pull in. So there's been some interesting bay parking experiences, I'll say that much. Again, there's a reason why I chose quiet times and places to do my practicing in this car. And I do think as well, something that some people may or may not find strange, but I've also found that I find it much easier to reverse into a parking bay, again, in this car, as I have done with the two instructors' cars that I drove to. Right, my friends, I thought we would have a change of location to draw this video to an end and talk about the impact that I think owning a car is going to have on my life. And there's two sides to this. There's the practical and the recreational. The practical, as I say, living on a boat, travelling around to different places on the canal. but having a fixed place of work and a sort of base area where my friends and family are in the vast majority means that there's a place that I always like to travel back to and cycle back to and stuff. So obviously now that's far less of an issue, because I can take the boat out way further than I ever could if I was thinking, oh, I've got a bike back. Whereas now it's not that much of an issue. I mean, if you consider that only 3 months or so ago, I had about a 24-mile bike ride commute. And if you've seen what the British summer weather is like, particularly this year, it's been more mist than it's been hit, I would say. And again, you can imagine cycling 24 miles each way to get to and from wherever you want to go to, see friends and family, that sort of stuff, is not particularly enjoyable in the cold, wet, windy weather, and certainly over the winter months. Whereas obviously now, if that's the case and I'm just hopping in a car, then 24 miles is nothing. It's not going to take hardly any time in comparison to cycling. And the key sort of element is obviously I'm going to arrive fresh, warm, dry, and not worn out from, well, I mean, the one day when I biked it and it was surprisingly windy, it absolutely, it just took it out of me, we'll say that much. So of course that's a massive thing, and of course there's other elements where going and getting supplies and things like that is going to be far easier now that I am not, obviously I never did, but obviously the idea of taking bags of coal in my backpack and then hopping on my bike wasn't ever going to happen. So again, there's less likely to be any issues where I find myself running low on supplies and having to take the boat down the canal to stock up and stuff like that. Similarly, just things like going and visiting my dad and stuff, who lives away from Oswestry, so obviously he's not around there when I'm in town or going to work to just pop into. So I'll just nip down so we don't get random people's number plates in the screen there. Again, you can see all 96.7 miles I've added to the 27,500 mile total this car's done over the last 3.5 years or so. So yeah, obviously if I'd go to my dad's house, I'd get the bus out to there in most cases, and then have to have a lift back off him or stop overnight. So of course, with my little sister, who's 25 years younger than me, so very little sister, obviously it would obviously have to be fit in before her bedtime and stuff, whereas now I can come and go and again just visit as and when I please, really. So that's all good. Then, like I say, there's the recreational element, which somebody mentioned on Twitter when I posted about having a car, said something like, oh no, is this the end of your biking days? Well, the reason that I got the Skoda Fabia is because it's actually got much more boot space and space in the back end of the car than a lot of similarly priced, similarly spec'd small cars. And I don't think you'd be able to tell from the video here. You can see I've got the parcel shelf slotted down at the back, so that's why it looks a bit metal and open there, because the shelf's not in place. So you can see the metal boot back, the tailgate if you will. But the space, just visibly looking, it's visibly massive compared to my dad's Ford Fiesta. And obviously once the seats are down, it's going to be easy to chuck my bike in and out. So what I'm thinking is basically, just like with my walking, instead of, I mean, just a location like this, Oswestry Racecourse, it'd probably be to this point, maybe about an 8-mile round trip on my bike to get to here. And obviously it's a very big hill to get up for anyone who doesn't know this area. So you're not necessarily feeling particularly fresh if you've cycled up to this point. Whereas I can now literally just fetch my bike out to places way further afield than this. And instead of having cycled like 15-20 miles to get there, I can be fresh, take my bike out, put the front wheel on, and then pedal around completely different areas, or go up walking local hills and mountains, or mountains further afield for that matter. And obviously, instead of having to walk, bus, or cycle out to those places, I can just drive straight to them and then go for these walks and bike rides in completely different areas, which is not only always fun to just go off exploring and be on strange roads that I don't know, but obviously it's just, well, again, it's something that's just not possible with my previous carless life. and that's something I'm really thoroughly enjoying. Like I say, the fundamental element of choosing this car over some of the cars that might have had more fancy features like reverse cameras and cruise control and speed limiters, things like that. I went for this car specifically because even though it lacks those features compared to others, it's got infinitely more space to chuck me bike in. And yeah, I've got to say, I'm really thoroughly looking forward to getting stuck into, well, just going off adventuring and stuff. Let's hope we have some nice weather for it now. Anyway, I've talked to you for quite long enough. Those are my initial thoughts on owning a car and what I'm envisioning the change to my life is going to be and how it's going to impact life in general. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friends. This has been a totally different type of video. Obviously, normally I'd be showing you more of the outdoors rather than straight up talking at you for 15 minutes or however long this video is going to last once it's edited. Sorry if the mirror's cutting into the shot here. I don't know. I've got to figure out these angles for in-car filming. Let's have a think. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell, so hopefully YouTube will actually go as far as to tell you when I post a video. It doesn't always happen, sadly, so hit the notification bell even if you're already subscribed, please. Feel free, check the links in the description if you want to help me out. You'll find my boat life books, things like that, for the Kindle, as a paperback, things of that nature. Feel free to add me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all those sorts of things. There's loads of links to social media in the description below. But for now, my friends, I'm going to simply say have an absolutely fantastic day. Keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, keep it car worthy. Brum brum. Oh, what a way to end the video. Why did I do that? Anyway, I'm committed to it now. And of course, my friends, have an absolutely fantastic day. And of course, farewell.